When you read the book of Revelation, it's filled with some of the most powerful and, let's be real, sometimes terrifying imagery in the entire Bible. We're talking trumpets, plagues, falling stars. It can feel like you're reading a script for a disaster movie. But what if we've been looking at some of these passages all wrong? What if a story that seems to be about doom is actually a story of incredible hope?
Just listen to this from Revelation chapter 8. And the third angel sounded, and there fell a great star from heaven, burning as it were a lamp. Wow, that is some intense, apocalyptic stuff. You can almost feel the heat and see the sky just breaking apart. It sounds like the end of the world, plain and simple.
But is it? Is this verse really describing some literal, catastrophic event that poisons the planet? Or could it possibly be a symbolic description of something else entirely? Something spiritual, profound, and maybe even central to the entire Christian faith? Well, that is the mystery we are going to try and decode together in this explainer.
Okay, so in the very next verse, we actually learn this star has a name, wormwood. And traditionally, that name carries some pretty heavy baggage. Throughout Scripture, wormwood is basically synonymous with bitterness, punishment, and God's judgment. You see it in places like Jeremiah and Proverbs. They consistently link wormwood to this bitter consequence for turning away from God. So it's really easy to see why for centuries people have read this and thought, yep, this is about doom and gloom. On the surface, it seems pretty straightforward, right? But what if we pivot? This is where it gets really interesting. What if this isn't about a destructive object at all? The source material for this explainer puts a radical idea on the table. What if this falling star actually represents a person?
And this just frames the whole puzzle perfectly. On one side, you've got the common view, a literal star, a meteor, bringing destruction. But on the other side, you've got a completely different lens, a symbolic star that represents a willing, sacrificial act. This contrast, right here, is the turning point in our entire understanding of the verse.
So, to unlock this new interpretation, we can't just take the verse at face value. We have to do what the Bible so often asks us to do. We've got to interpret its symbols using other parts of Scripture as our key. It's time to decode the star, the lamp, and the waters. And to do that right, let's go straight to the source, the original Greek. As you can see, our key words here are aster for star, lampis for lamp, and hydor for water. By figuring out how these exact words are used as symbols elsewhere in the Bible, we can piece together a completely new picture. All right, let's start with symbol number 1, the great star. In this interpretation, the star is not some random rock from space, it's Jesus. And this is so important. This is not a fall in the sense of failure or being cast out of heaven. No, it's a willing descent, a deliberate act of humility and sacrifice. And the scriptural support for this is just powerful. In Revelation 22, Jesus himself says, "I am the bright and morning star." In Luke, he's called the dayspring from on high. And then you've got Philippians, which describes his willing descent from glory all the way down to the cross. The imagery lines up perfectly. Okay, next up is the second symbol. The star isn't just falling, it's described as burning as a lamp. Now, that's not just a poetic detail, it's a huge theological statement. It connects this falling star directly to Jesus' identity as the light of the world, the true living source of spiritual illumination that fulfills and even replaces the physical lamp that used to burn in the temple. And the evidence is right there in Scripture. In the Gospel of John, Jesus declares, "I am the light of the world." He's called the true light. This connects his spiritual purpose directly to that physical lamp from Exodus, the one that had to burn continually as a symbol of God's presence. Jesus becomes that eternal, living presence. And finally, we get to our third symbol, the waters. So if the star is Jesus, what are the rivers and fountains that it falls on? Well, in this spiritual reading, we're not talking about literal H2O. They are powerful metaphors for the very sources of human existence, the great currents of humanity and the deep individual wells of the human spirit.
And again, the Bible itself gives us the key. Revelation 17 explicitly defines waters as peoples and nations. Jeremiah calls God the fountain of living waters, and Proverbs talks about the heart being the wellspring of life. The conclusion here is pretty clear. The waters are us.
So now that we've decoded all the individual symbols, we can put them back together. And this is where we get to see how this builds a completely new and honestly beautiful narrative.
This just completely reframes the whole event. So picture this. First, the star, who we now see as Jesus, willingly descends to earth through his sacrifice. Second, the lamp, His divine light burns brightly, illuminating all of humanity. And third, the waters are touched. His sacrifice penetrates the rivers of all nations and the fountains of every single individual heart.
So here's the crucial point, the main takeaway. The sounding of that third trumpet isn't describing a future cosmic disaster, it's a powerful, poetic depiction of a past spiritual event of monumental importance. The moment the light of Christ's sacrifice entered the world and touched the soul of humanity. And when you see it this way, the entire emotional tone of the passage just shifts completely. What once seemed to be about judgment and destruction is now revealed as this incredible message about divine intervention and ultimate purpose.
This quote from our source material just captures it perfectly. The trumpet blast isn't a warning of doom, but it's the announcement of a divine light breaking into the human soul, a light that separates spiritual death from life and illuminates the way forward. It's a message of pure redemption. And that leaves us with one final thought to really chew on. How does seeing this famous, often feared verse not as a prophecy of a falling star, but as a beautiful poem about the descending sun, how does that change the message of Revelation for you? It transforms it from a book to be feared into a book that reveals, above all else, a story of profound and enduring hope.